I want to do the Rocky thing now. Okay, so we're live. Howdy doody. Welcome to today's show. Today I'm with my compadre, Fulgrim Malone.
How you doing, guys? Nice to be back.
Mr. Warpark Studios himself. And with me, Templar's Crusade, bouncing up the chest. Here we are today to talk about all things Emperor's Children, starting from the really early days, going all the way back to when they were first founded. Okay, so we're probably going to add a few things in and make up some bits and pieces as we go along. Thanks very much for last week, everybody that watched last week's episode, The Emperor of Mankind, and thanks a lot for the guys that sent me messages on my private Facebook saying you got this wrong, you should this and this, and that was really helpful because it made me look up a lot of things, which is quite cool. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about all things Emperor's Children. Now I've got a instant hatred for the Emperor's Children, not because you collected them for a long time, but for the pure fact that they just do my name.
Really?
Emperor's Children for me are one of these. I think Fulgrim, the book Fulgrim, did it for me because I often complain about that book because I started reading it and I went and then skipped to the end. And for me, that was the best part of the book. But I know for you, the whole book, you love the whole book. But why don't we go back to the early days of the Emperor's Children, back to when it was the Unification Wars, and the Emperor's going around and he's trolleying all the other continents and all warlords and stuff like that. So how did this all start? I'm going to drink a cup of coffee.
Yeah. It's a weird one. Their story differs to a lot of the other legions, because there was only very few of them at the beginning. Because obviously there was that they lost a lot of their gene seed in an accident, but no one knows what kind of happened to it. And it was like the first on Terra, it was kind of made up of nobility that the Emperor had conquered, like I think it was Europa and stuff like that. That they would actually send their children. You know, the nobles and noble houses would send their children to the Emperor as almost a tie or a gift.
And this is very much like in the real world, where back in the Crusades and stuff like that, if they captured nobility, like for example, the Turks, when they used to capture places, they would take the children away and incorporate them into their armies and stuff like that, and they would grow up there. And so we're starting to see this evolving into 40k. Sorry, dude. I've got so much in my room. There we go. That's better. That's not so better, actually. There we go. This place is a mess. I've got to say, today it's been a mess all day long. Sorry, go ahead. You go ahead.
Yeah. It was, and that's my instant kind of love for them. They were always a little bit different, and they were always kind of a little bit in that, you know, that striving for perfection. You know, they were going to falter at some point, and that's what attracted to me to them, and that's why they'll always be my first love. Even though I've got appreciation now for other legions and things, I think it was just and it was how Fulgrim, his backstory as well.
Let's start at the beginning. Let's start. So we've gone for the Europa Wars, okay?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, there's you. You're a noble child. You've been given to this conquering power to raise up and bring into your new ranks. Because at that point in time, we're talking about the Thunder Warriors, which I really wish they'd make the Thunder Warriors because they're so cool. You get the Thunder Warriors. Mankind is creating a brand new warrior to replace the Thunder Warriors, and it's to the tail end that the Emperor's Children are formed as a legion. Now, we don't know what they were called beforehand. We're trying to work this out, aren't we? We were actually saying earlier on, we can't find what they were called before. Like, we know that, you know, the World Eaters were called the Warhounds or something like that, and we know that, you know, every other legion had a name before they became that legion or before they found their Primarch. We don't know what the Emperor's children would go, "Oh, we can't remember," or "We can't remember."
They were named quite late on, weren't they, as well? Because obviously it was when he rediscovered Fulgrim and stuff that they got, and then the Emperor, and they got gifted that name. So you would think that you would have thought that they would have had a name before. I'm sure someone somewhere knows and will put it in the comments or correct us, but I just couldn't find it.
I'm trying to look. I'm looking at my iPad and Wikipedia for the heresy
On the sly,
and it's got nothing there. It's just sort of going through it. It's going no clearance campaign during Unification Wars, blah 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 blah. But basically we know that they're the Third Legion. So how was this? Is it? I don't really know much about Fulgrim. I know as much as I know from the books, but how was he found? What's the story behind Fulgrim and how he was found?
Well, from what I understand, he was basically, he was seen as like a flash of light in the sky, hit the ground. On a planet called Chemos. I'm sure I'm slaughtering all of the pronunciations of these planets and stuff. And it was basically a run-down, beaten-down world where it was poverty was rife, and these three workers walk up to this where they thought this thing had crash landed, and they just kind of stood there, didn't know what to make, and there was like this swirling light, and then they couldn't make it out, and then this swirling light kind of twisted into like a child. And then the first thought of one of the guys that saw it was just like, oh, it's a child, it's another mouth to feed, we haven't got the resources, and actually went to kill the child. The other two people that were with him turned around and basically shot him because they were absolutely in awe of the child. And you don't know whether he was already in their minds at that point, whether he was already manipulating, controlling things. For them just to turn around on a worker that they've been working with all their lives and shoot him dead, and then they took this child back to their refinery because it was like a mineral-rich world. And it was just a lot of mines and digging and stuff like that. And and basically he went through the ranks, basically reformulated how they did things, created a lot of new technology, went out and actually expanded their empire, and started to introduce things like art and culture and things where before it was just all drudge, all work, all work and no play. But he's actually starting to.
But with these, the thing is with all of these, if you don't know much about the Primarchs, and if you're watching this, you know more than we do. All the Primarchs were scattered across the universe, and by the powers of chaos. So throughout that, we know that I don't know what's on there. Oh yeah, throughout that, we know that that they've probably been manipulated, or they've changed somehow, or we kind of think that things have happened between them. We don't actually know. So when they land on these planets, they're found by normal human beings or aliens of some sort. I don't know if it's always been humans that have been found, because they've always landed on human planets, haven't they? Except for I don't know some of the I can't name one Primarch that's landed on an alien planet.
I think the weirdest one was probably Lionel Johnson, wasn't he? He kind of landed in the forest at Caliban.
Yeah, and that's full of
monsters for 10 years
and stuff like that. Yeah. He's a wild child, but So Fulgrim grows up bringing culture and so, which is kind of weird, isn't it? Really, for Fulgrim, because as he turns, well, not really, because he kind of like in the books, he's into his art and he's into his sculptures and stuff like that. Anything beautiful, isn't it? He loves that sort of stuff. And so, how does the Emperor find him? Because at one point, the Emperor turns up. Now, I know most stories for most of the other Primarchs. I think it's because of my pure hatred for the Emperor's children that I just couldn't be bothered to read up on them. And I know it sounds really terrible because I've read pretty much everything else. And even the Primarchs that I'm not really interested in, I've read sort of thing, But what happens when the Emperor turns up? Because we know that when he turns up, it's a massive fanfare. It's this huge event sort of thing that changes the lives or how the Primarchs perceive the Emperor later on in life.
Yeah, it was a kind of, well, he was in charge of almost like a whole system at this point. Fulgrim, he'd raised you got into such, obviously all of the Primarchs that I know of either get to a certain place, you know, where they either run or rule things or have a, you know, a high standard of or position, and they're actually preparing for a war. But as soon as Fulgrim laid eyes on the Emperor, he knew that this was perfection itself, and he just literally, that was it. You know, he got down. He got down. You know, he kneeled before the Emperor.
He got down on one knee.
He got down on one knee, basically, yeah. And you know, he was complete fealty. You know, handed his sword over and went, you know, I'm yours. Teach me. And he was so in awe. He was so in awe of his father.
Yeah.
And then obviously he went back and he understood that something had happened. It was, you know, a transportation accident that I can make out. They were going somewhere, and basically nearly all of their gene seed was destroyed. So there was only around 200, 200 Astartes.
Yeah.
And then when he got to Terra, but the speech that he gave, it was like there was 100,000 there, and this is where the Emperor was stood in the wings, basically listened to the speech that he'd given, and was like almost brought to tears.
Hold on. What's this? So does he goes back to Terra?
He goes back to Terra, yeah.
Right. So because I don't know about this bit, this speech, so he's only got 200 with him.
Yeah, he's only got 200 Astartes, yeah.
And he goes back to Terra where there's a load more there waiting.
No.
Oh, right. Okay, go on.
There's only 200, but he addressed them. You imagine all of the other Primarchs had, you know, thousands upon thousands of Astartes, and how they addressed them. And Fulgrim was still so proud to have these 200 men, you know, or 200 Astartes. And he spoke in such, well, he's Fulgrim, isn't he? You know, and how he carried himself. And then that's when they awarded him the Aquila, and obviously the name as well as the Emperor's Children.
Okay, so let's talk about the Aquila. So the Aquila is prominent really to the Emperor's Children, but is awarded to like also champions and heroes and stuff like that. Basically, it's like the ultimate accolade, isn't it, for being like, you're a good guy, well done, you've done well, here, have this. And it's mostly the Emperor's Children that we see on it, and that's where we see it's only the standard Aquila with the one head, isn't it? Not the double-headed eagle. Yeah,
and basically that no other legion was awarded that. Actually, other legions were told not to bear it. So, and especially the name as well, Emperor's Children. And I think that was the start of the pressure being added to Fulgrim. It was like, oh, we're the Emperor's Children, you know, and this is where this whole perfection thing started to come into things.
Because it affects them quite heavily, doesn't it? Especially in game, you know, the whole perfection thing. And in the stories that we read, because when we first meet them in the first book, it kind of comes across as a bit of an arse, doesn't he? And the whole lot do, to be fair. They've got this real sort of chip on their shoulder, and this is where we meet Lucius for the first time as well, because let's face it, and Eidolon, or Eidolon, or whatever his name is.
Eidolon,
and we meet him as well. And it's that whole sort of like, is it Saul Travitz as well? Is it Saul Travitz? Is he?
Saul Travitz, yeah.
Yeah, he's another Emperor's child, isn't he? Children.
Yeah, he was a loyalist, though. He remained loyal with
that. Yeah, but that's what I liked about that. But anyway, okay, so look, we're jumping again. Okay, so we go. So by now, he's mustered a few more troops, because we catch up with him on the Great Crusades, where he's now... they're beautiful battle barges, and I remember the way they describe it, these great big glass domes and stuff like that. You know, with all these sort of big golden crests and stuff all over the place on the outside of it. And it always reminded me of the way it's sort of described as this sort of like pleasure palace, basically in space, just drifting along. Even though, you know, at that time they're not, you know, raping and pillaging everything in sight. You know, they're back in the days where it's just like their sword play is perfect, and you know, everything they do, they have to be the best at, which is kind of cool. So the first time you see it is where they attack it. Is it the Crystal City that? Is it? I can't remember what battle it is in one of the books that we first see them go down to the planet to do their thing. Is it? There's like a Crystal City. There's maybe witches of some sort. I can't remember. It shows you how interested I was in that book.
Yeah. Well, no, you first hear of them on Murder, don't you? I think that's
no. Is it? That's the Blood Angels, isn't it?
Well, it was Blood Angels, Lunar Wolves, and Emperor's Children. That's where Eidolon got his hand slapped by Torgadon in front of one of his men, and that was the other thing as well, to sow the seed, because as well the Lunar Wolves and Emperor's Children had a great brotherhood, because obviously they weren't big enough to go out on their own at the beginning. So they were attached to the Lunar Wolves, basically. Fulgrim was 200, and they actually travelled and fought with the Lunar Wolves for quite a while. And then when, obviously, as the longer it went on, the more kind of inductees they had and could go out on their own and start doing their thing. I mean, they're always seen as kind of I don't know, like prissy boys in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really kind of hard hitting, and you know, I mean.
But they're always trying to prove themselves, aren't they? Because they're being such a small legion, they were always trying to outdo the others and be better than the others. I think that's where the whole, the whole thing about perfection comes from, them really struggling as a legion to gain all these honors and stuff like that, because where the bigger legions were fighting the bigger wars, obviously they are sort of dragged along in the wake, sort of thing. And so when you see them going down for the first time and actually doing battles or preparing for battles by themselves, it's quite a thing, isn't it, for them? It's like they're really trying to. It's like your younger brother always trying to prove he's better than you, sort of thing. Like certain things, or you get that one friend that really sort of pushes to be better at gaming and stuff like that at you, sort of thing, or knows all the rules inside, which is pretty much everyone compared to me, to be honest. And even the history as well, you can see today. Okay, so I remember so they do the Battle of Murder. I remember that one, and then later on we see them again where they're fighting. I think it's against these witches. This is where before Eidolon. That's right. That's right.
The Layer.
And it's that city where it's in the water, isn't it? And there's like loads of different sort of like and they said that they were so formidable as an enemy that it would take any legion 10 years to purge. Fulgrim obviously took this as a challenge and did the whole thing in a month. That's right, because this is where he gets his sword, isn't it?
This is it, yeah. So
this is all set up though. This whole thing, from what I remember in the book, this is all set up for him to get that sword.
Yeah, and obviously some of the troops that went into the actual, because obviously they defeat the Lion over so many battles, and they took horrific losses as well. Over 700, I think, dead, close to 4,000 injured, if I can remember correctly.
And it being such a small legion, that's a hell of a lot of troops.
Yeah, and even though they never got to the same numbers as his brothers. They were always one of the smaller legions. So they took heavy losses. Obviously, they went into the Temple of Lion, and then obviously he finds the sword, doesn't he?
But it's who goes? I think it's Lucius that goes in first, is it? Because this is where he gets a little bit. One of the sort of like main characters is the first one in there, and you can see all the bodies writhing around and stuff like that. And isn't the sword's like on a plinth or something like? I can't remember.
In the middle of the room, and they're all slithering around. Kind of lizardy, I think, weren't they?
They're all getting it on. So there we are. You're a space marine. You walk in. You've got all these like geezers and creatures all slithering around on top of each other in baby oil. You've got the sword in the center, and it's like I remember like the character's almost entranced by what's happening, and then all of a sudden we get the Primarch walks in, or I think they take the sword and they give it to him. I can't remember because I was that interested in it. But because it's only the Emperor's Children, I tend to go flick, flick, flick.
Yeah.
Okay, but he gets the sword, and this is the bit where we're going to skip a few things and move forward to the book Fulgrim. Okay, now I'm just going to say it now. I had mass issues with Fulgrim, the book. A lot of people say it's one of the best books out there. I tend to disagree, okay, because whenever I read a book, and all the other books up until that point, all the other books I read from front to back. But when I started on Fulgrim, I started reading it, and I don't know whether I just got lost in, oh no, who's this? And what's going on here? Because in this book, as far as I'm concerned, there's a painting that talks to him or something like that.
Yeah.
Or he's, and he's always having this conversation, isn't he, with this painting? And he's starting to go a little bit doolally. From what we know, because don't forget, I skipped to the end. Okay. The night before the big battle, the drop site massacre, I just went, oh, why is this woman painting with her own poo and blood? Okay, what's going on here? Because I just got completely lost with it. I was just like, no. Skip to the end. I think I emailed somebody and said, where's the best part of the book? And they said, right at the end. So I got to the end. I said, where does the battle start? I think it was. And they went, page so-and-so. So I missed our whole section of him going insane. Okay. Yeah. And I think he knifes like two people with a sword or impales them into a statue or something like that.
Yeah.
But let's lead up to the point where the night before the battle. So what's it all about?
See, I can only remember bits of that book as well, and it was one of, and even though I'm an Emperor's Children fan, I still think that book was quite slow, and it was based around a lot of like the remembrances and the artists and things.
It was, so, and it was just so much sort of, and like you say,
he was kind of like, I mean, at this point he's unaware of the kind of swords. The Demoness Slanesh is actually locked within the sword, and it's kind of like whispering to him. But he starts seeing like things, as like you say, the painting with the poo, and he like talking to him. And then obviously he sculpts something, and then a sculptor actually slights him and said, "You're the best sculptor I've ever seen, but it's too perfect. There's no soul to it." And obviously he snaps and kills and then it's I can't remember now. My mind's gone completely blank.
Well, there's a bit in it where I think that you think that he's at the end of it. You think he's in the painting. You think that basically the demons transferred him into the painting, and it's the demon that's taken over his body. Okay, and then we do this. The night before the battle, they're in the Great Hall. This woman's singing, and then there's a massive orgy, and it's marine on marine, and it's all go.
I couldn't find any reference to that on a check.
I know, but
you always say
to this day. I know to this day, because I just sort of went, oh, what? And I'm sure there's a section in there where it says he takes on that marine. Anyway, the marine takes on another marine. Nothing wrong with it. Each to their own.
Exactly.
Anyway, but I just sort of, at that point, I was just like, oh, what? This is just so blah, blah, blah. Carry on.
Wasn't that amazing, though? Like, literally, demonettes appearing.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay. I guess that was really cool, Like, had it been written differently where, it was a bit more, well, okay, this is kind of, I just think, because it was so boring all the way up until that point, or all the way up to the bit that I read, which was the first 6 pages, and then skipped to the end. No, I'm joking. Up until the point, because I was reading so much of it, and I was like, oh, I'm so bored of this book. And I think I kept getting lost. And I think because the boredom just got me lost within that book.
It was a difficult book to follow, though.
It was, wasn't it? Because there was just so much happening in such little sort of sections that you sort of went, well, hold on, who's this person? I've got to go back to that.
If you go to the first 4 books, and they were so kind of action packed, and Galaxy in Flames and Flight of the Eyes and stuff, and then this kind of slowed everything down a little bit, and
Yeah.
And because there were so many characters as well, there's so many prevalent kind of Emperor's Children characters. I think he was trying to get you to know all of them a little bit too much, and who the stern ones were, who the funny ones. Well, there's no funny ones, but
there is no funny ones.
No.
Lucius maybe, but even he's sort of like.
But he doesn't know he's funny. Everyone just laughs at him because he's such an
exactly.
ass.
But isn't that's the same book where Eidolon's really badly wounded, or he has this new throat thing? Because I think Saul sees him in battle. You use the first sort of like, what's that thing? With the guitar and the noise marine. He's the first noise marine, basically, isn't he?
Yeah, but basically he was the way basically Fabius Boyle started experimenting. Well, he started experimenting back from murder on blood angels and wounded Emperor's children, with the blessing of Fulgrim as well, because obviously he promised Fulgrim. That was how he got into his head. He says, I can make your gene seed better. I can improve things. And then obviously he started to experiment on people. So there's a lot of like, is Eidolon the first? Because obviously that event that we're talking about in the opera, the theatre.
Yeah.
It was either, is Eidolon the first noise marine, or was Verosium, wasn't it, that went over to the instruments that were being played?
Yeah.
And literally hit that chord, and then everyone just started losing their minds, and then he obviously, when it got to he was the first noise marine and leader of the cacophony at the Istvan 5. So it's kind of like, are you a noise marine because you can have that? Is it?
Well, I think I think Eidolon is the first one to use it.
Yeah,
I think, because you see him on the stairs, don't you? Running up the stairs on that outside of that big building, sort of thing, that pyramid. And Saul's running up, can see him fighting. And I think it's him that uses that sonic scream.
Yeah, because he says his body distends, doesn't it?
Yeah,
naturally, and
it goes wah, like that, and the person goes and explodes. Okay, that's what I remember in the book. It's been so long since I read it, but that's what I remember. And he's like, "What is that?" And you see, Eidolon turns back and goes, "Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, look at me." And that's before he gets the big sort of like brush over.
Yeah, which I didn't expect him to look like that whatsoever.
I kind of like that in the model, though.
Oh yeah, I think it's a brilliant model, but it just didn't fit what I pictured in my head for him to be. I just didn't think he'd be that pretty.
But but they're all pretty, dude.
Yeah.
Except for Lucius, who's now all scarred up.
Oh yeah.
But all of them, I reckon, have been pretty. I mean, because they're made up of nobles and stuff like that, and and the perfection then starts to appear within a lot of the Emperor's children. So I can see them all beautifying themselves, and there's a lot of the Slanesh influence.
Yeah.
And all that sort of stuff starting to appear. So I imagine there's going to be a lot of beautifying, and the brush over, it's kind of cool. I mean, it's quite popular today. We see it with Trump and a few other people. But,
you had to bring him up, didn't you?
Yeah, I had to bring him up. What a dick. Anyway, but I've got to say, I kind of like the character, the model. I kind of like that. And then, obviously, there's that spin-off to some, and we're hoping some of the other models that we see. I mean, because the Palatine Blade, is it?
Yeah.
They look fantastic.
Yeah. I think a lot of the Cacophony are probably one of my favourite minis that Forge Order have produced. They're absolutely beautiful things. The Phoenix Guard, it seems like the Emperor's Children have got quite a lot, and I think rightfully so. But I just really enjoy it. I mean, just that whole descent into and obviously, and then poor old Aldrad tried to warn Fulgrim, didn't he, of Horus and then that ended up as him. I think he killed.
I think he's killed.
He kills one of the oldest Wraith Lords, I think. And Wraith Lords are old anyway. And then he killed an avatar. But hold on. This is where the
Eldar come to Fulgrim and say, look, he's going to go bad. You've got to do something about it. And he's like, no, doesn't he? And doesn't he crush like the avatar's head? in his hands.
Yeah, he either does that or
I think he does.
He smashes his face. Yeah, he
no,
definitely
he
does.
just goes. He goes like, and he squeezes his hand, and he's got like burnt hands afterwards because the Avatar cane or whatever it's called. He goes, crushes it, and then everybody's like, oh my god,
I'm surprised Aldrad ran away then as well.
Yeah.
Aldrad was like, no, I'm not having any of this.
Yeah, don't blame him.
And it was kind of, I always remember that as well, picture it, because the world that they landed on was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And then kind of like Fulgrim and all of these, the guys that were with him started to kind of like cry because they couldn't take in the beauty. Yeah. And then that's when I thought, this is a slippery slope now. Especially, that's the thing as well. Everyone thinks that Fulgrim's such a priss. I mean, look at the things that he's taken out.
I've never thought that he couldn't handle himself. I've always watched him and read him in the books as someone that could quite easily handle, because his swordsmanship is supposed to be second to none.
Yeah.
I mean, he's supposed to be amazing, isn't he? I think it's a lovely balance that they've got with him where they've created this like Primarch, and the original Primarch is all about perfection and beauty and finding sort of promoting culture. He would have been a fantastic attaché, wouldn't he? Like you send him out there sort of thing to to promote like British culture. He could have really sold it sort of thing, bangers and mash, you should try it. And it would have been one of those things that he could have quite easily sold. And he's always been a sort of well-balanced character, but you always knew that twist, boom, off you go. He could quite easily handle himself. And so there we are, night before the Drop Site Massacre. Now, the Drop Site Massacre for me is one of I think the pinnacle story of the proper beginning of the traitors and the Horus Heresy. I mean, I know we have the expulsion of all the loyalists in the beginning of the World Eaters and stuff. Basically, they're just they're thinning out their ranks, getting rid of all the ones that could possibly turn against them at the beginning. But this is the setup, because at the moment it's only a few chapters or of legions that they know that have turned traitor, and they send everybody. We've got the Iron Hands, the Raven Guard. We've got the only ones that don't go are the Imperial Fists, from what I can remember.
Imperial Fists and Ultramarines.
Ultramarines, yeah, they're the only ones that don't go there. Then you've got and the White Scars.
Yeah, the White Scars aren't there.
Yeah. So, but it's pretty much all the big legions, and also you've got the other traitor legions that no one knows about have turned traitor, which are the Iron Warriors, the Night Lords,
Word
Bearers as well. So this is all starting to kick off. So it's the night before, they've all set up. They're all waiting. Well, some of them are waiting. Some of them are having a party and getting on. Obviously, you know who that is. You can just imagine, like being one of the other traitors and like just walking in on that, like, what the fuck? Okay, you open the door and they're just at it, and you're like, oh,
yeah,
in there, and it's just
too much.
It would just be too much. And so the next day, the first load of loyalists land. They start pushing forward. It's the Iron Hands, the Raven Guard, and the Salamanders that land. They literally push forward. They don't even wait, from what I remember. They just go straight in, don't they?
Yeah.
And then it's the others land behind them, and they're setting up the basically the big bang. The trap basically, and it's the whole thing when it all turns and the rest of the bad guys start launching them. It's just amazing because it brings us into a number of different stories from different Primarchs' point of view on that day. It would have been nice to see a little bit more of the Sons of Horus, their point of view on that. It would have been a little bit more. It would have been nicer to see some more. I'd like to see some more story in that, because that's just not a one-day battle. That's 6 months and stuff like that. I mean, it just sort of goes on, doesn't it? Where they're trying to track down all the other spacemen, loyalist spacemen that are on the run.
They did touch on it in a few of the other books. I think First Heretic
Yeah,
they touched on it, and Deliverance as well. Deliverance Lost.
well, Deliverance Lost is just absolutely amazing. But it's also Flight of Ravens. No, one of the audio where there's a classic line in it where Korax, he goes to Korax, well, what about your honor guard, sir? And he goes, what makes you think I need honor guard? And he just goes off, and they're like, okay. All right, then, off you go. Good luck to you. And I love that story because that's the one where he picks up a rock and just decapitates a guy with a stone. And I'm just like shoots it. And he's about to give out a warning. He goes through his neck, sort of thing. And then I think he rips off a hatch off a turret of a tank, a predator, grabs the bloke, pulls him out, or just beats him to death with the turret, and then uses a heavy bolter like a pistol and just like pop, 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 pop. It's just absolutely amazing. I mean, that whole sequence is described so well, and the way they talk it through, sort of thing. I just straight away I could picture that in my head. Well, I'm jumping away. We're talking about now the big battle. So this is the part where we've had two brothers that have been great friends. Now we've also had Fulgrim attacking the Iron Hands already, because the Primarch of the Iron Hands is pissed. He's after Fulgrim, and he just, from what I remember, he just goes off.
Well, they'd had an altercation before that.
Yeah, because he actually attacked him. He's already attacked him, hasn't he? Because
he's closest with Ferris out of all of his brothers, and he goes to him. Obviously, Horus has twisted him by this point. He's twisted Fulgrim, and he goes and he says, if Ferris is going to turn for anyone, he'll turn for you. And then,
that is brilliant.
It's terrible. And basically,
it's a great story. If he's going to turn, he's going to turn for you. Of course he is. Send the pretty boy. You're not going to send the big muscular guy, are you? So the thing is that whole bit that was really good because he's really angry now. Ferris is just like, he just wants to get him. He can't believe that his best brother. I mean, these two, they've made weapons for each other. Yeah. You can't get any more bro romance than these two guys. Fulgrim and Ferris. They've both made these beautiful weapons for each other. Okay. Yeah. They've laughed, they've joked, they've always communicated. They've always had a very strong friendship, sort of thing. He's turned on him. He's really mad now. And when we come to the drop site massacre, he goes off. Yeah. He doesn't even wait. His honor guard is still trying to chase up behind him and clear up areas behind him, sort of thing, as they're trying to catch up. The whole fight sequence for me was over way too quickly, or not described as well as I wanted it to be.
Especially because it was the kind of like first battle between brothers. I mean, we'd had a few little scuffles and I'm telling daddy on you moments, but this was a full action fight, to the death. Yeah. And it was just a little bit contradictory. I mean, I know there's a lot of contradiction in a few of the little books, a few of the books and stuff, but it was like you say, it seemed that it was over very quickly, and it seemed that, I mean, you'd think it would go on for days, and they'd go across the battlefield and kill loads of Astartes that were treading on them and knocking them out of the way. And obviously they both lose their weapon, and he uses a sword of Layan to decapitate. That's the point where, that's the point where Fulgrim just literally, when he sees that his brother hurt, he lowers his guard and thinks, what am I doing? And then that's when the demon goes, oh no, I'm taking over now.
Yeah, I'm going to do this. But the thing is that whole point, I'm like, whoa, okay, because Ferris has always come across as being very strong-willed, a precise, creator, when it comes to things. So you think his fighting skills would be just as intense.
He was supposed to be the strongest, wasn't he? He was supposed to be one of the strongest of his brothers.
But then suddenly you've got I don't know whether it's finesse versus just brawn or strength and stuff like that. The finesse, the style of fighting wins. But it just seemed that his rage didn't really sort of impact on the fight at all. I was I wanted him to really give Fulgrim a big beating, but Fulgrim wins by, just that slight moment, that moment of, what am I doing? And then Fulgrim goes, gotcha, takes him down, sort of thing. But
they do take chunks out of each other, but you'd expect them to be kind of, like Ferris would almost take him to the brink and And I think it was in one of the other books where Lorgar and Kurz, and they were basically watching this epic battle up on this this hillside, and Lorgar turns around and says, "Fulgrim's toying with him now."
Yeah, I think I remember that.
Yeah, and I was just like, "Oh, dude, I don't want to." I mean, even though I went through the whole of your campaign, as Fulgrim and for Ferrus Manus and things, and it was so. I think our battle on the day was more epic than in the book.
Yeah, because I remember because Jackson was playing the Iron Hands Ferris, wasn't he? So there was always there was always this sort of like jollity and sort of like, I'm going to get you now, I'm going to get you sort of thing between the two anyway, which was just absolutely amazing. But I kind of like wanted it so much to be like this big intense fight where they're pushing people out of the way to get to each other sort of thing, or maybe you saw Fulgrim pulling back, teasing him into it like a bigger sort of fight sort of thing, but it just sort of seemed, and the way that GW, I really love this, but I love the fact that they've built that massive diorama, and then there's this giant rock that sticks out of the ground, where these two are just fighting on this little pinnacle sort of thing, this little like plinth on top of like the planet, but it was kind of like I just wanted to see much more of an epic fight, more of their struggle. And I think that's why I skipped all those pages just so I could get to the end sequence, because I kind of liked seeing the battle from all these different points of view. And let's face it, it's the turning point of the Horus Heresy. I mean, it's the point where everybody's joined in now. There's no more, okay, look, actually, you know what? We made a bit of a mistake. We're really sorry. We'll take a slap on the wrist. It will never happen again. What do you want to do about it? But it was the point where there was no turning back. It was the massacre, and it was literally the massacre of 3 of the loyalist legions, the biggest legions, that needed to be taken down. And I just wanted to see more of a fight. I wanted to see more of a struggle from Ferris, and a bit more. If he's going to toy with him, let's see him toying with him instead of one person going.
There's a few more little kind of battles and stuff that went on, between. But I love the fact that everyone would have seen the Emperor's Children of this pristine, purple and gold, and it was then they were one of the first legions to literally just go, "We'll show our hand." And when they turned up, they were just covered in skin from the from the opera the night before. They had like faces and heads dangling off them, like like the Night Lords and stuff, and everyone could see that they're just absolutely descended. And that wasn't even there. I thought, oh my God, they're crazy bastards. And then they just progressively get worse. It's like,
this is it. They do, don't they? Because if we skip forward a little bit, this is where, the perfection thing is starting to take root, not as a thing that benefits them, but a thing that's twisting them. And they're becoming more and more corrupt. And we can see that with, Lucius. You just have to look at Lucius. He wanted to be the ultimate sword fighter, didn't he? His thing was perfection personified. His skill was perfection. Basically, he reckoned he could even take on, Fulgrim, which was really quite cool. But you look at some of the other characters in there, and we're starting to see that twist. And obviously, we're seeing for the first time the Noise Marines in that battle. We're also seeing, the Demonettes coming into it as well, which was kind of cool. So after that, we see the Emperor's Children then just causing all sorts of trouble. I don't know much about their battles after the siege, after the Drop Site Massacre. I know that I don't know where they go off to after that. I don't know whether they just sort of hang along with Horus.
They kind of do. There was the whole thing, obviously, where after the battle, you can just see that Fulgrim's gone and he's basically imprisoned in his own body, and the demon's just like, haha, and then that's it.
There's that twist to that, isn't there?
Yeah, and then obviously his command, led by Lucius, where his commander's kind of like, and obviously Fulgrim knows what he's doing, where they kind of torture him and they know that this
is really cool, isn't it? This is really cool because they think a demon's taken over, he's tied to a chair, and they're they're torturing him to get the demon to confess that it's the demon, and we find out all along it's been Fulgrim all along. You know, and he sort of gets up and goes, well, no, it's me. I've been in control of this all along.
Yeah, he kind of banished the demon to the painting, didn't he? From what I remember,
which is really cool.
And then there was lots of like weird. Obviously, poor Eidolon as well used up his welcome and got beheaded.
Yeah,
by Fulgrim, and they passed his head around.
So tell me about that, because I can't remember that, Joe. I sort of slightly remember a little bit, but what happened there?
Yeah, it was kind of. I mean, Eidolon was his first commander. He's almost kind of like favourite in a way.
Yeah,
and he was trying to get a gauge on the rage, because 1 minute it'd be, Artisan Fulgrim, and the next minute it'd be dark in the woods in, you know what I mean, squeal pig territory, and then he was trying to get, and he thought that he kind of mastered it, and then obviously he didn't, and Fulgrim took his head clean off, and then they kind of passed it around the table. And then the weirdest thing of all is Fabius went, can I actually have his head? And Fulgrim went, yeah, sure. And he went, would you mind if I actually tried to reattach it and bring him back to life? and Fabius actually reattaches his head.
Yeah.
And he's alive as well. He's not as pretty, and he's got a little bit of a limp, and he's not as, but it was just absolutely hilarious that, this severed head become Eidolon again, and it was like obviously
actually because you've got Fabius, or however you want to pronounce it, Fabius. Yeah. He's down in this like sealed off area, creating like these weird creatures out of Space Marines, and trying to perfect the ultimate, trying to create gene seed. Because his story later on is, I mean, he even gets hold of the body of Horus and creates a brand new Horus, which is then destroyed by the Black Legion. They turn up and it's Abaddon that kills him. But
before that, though, he created. Well, they don't say, but he created Ferrus Manus over and over again. So Fulgrim would have the opportunity to try and to try and convince him to join the heresy.
No,
it was just like, and it was just like, join the heresy, and then Ferrus would go, no, and he'd kill him, and he'd go, Fabius, knock up another one for me. And it was just like,
this one's dead.
This one's rubbish. His head fell off. And it was like, they just descend into this kind of like mad. I mean, the thing with Eidolon and then the thing obviously with Lucius, and it just goes from. And then obviously they do that campaign with the Iron Warriors, where obviously Fulgrim is just literally the whole time trying to kill Perturabo, and he gives him that gemstone which weakens him. And
so I don't know anything about this, dude, because like I said.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So what happens with this? So what's the campaign that they go off on? Because I didn't really know.
It's basically a planet within the Eye of Terra, or on the outskirts of the Eye of Terra, Idrissa. It's a chrome world, and basically Fulgrim is tricking Perturabo by saying there's a thing on this planet called the Angel Exterminatus. It's the ultimate weapon. It will destroy planets. It will bring us, bring the Imperium to heel. And Perturabo is kind of like, oh, okay, let's go. And all the time they're being followed by the remnants of the Shattered Legions.
Yeah,
it's a really cool book. I mean, long and short of it, I mean, there's a crazy thing where the Iron Warriors make this kind of like fortress, almost like temporary fortress, and all of these Emperor's children, there's about 2,000 of them just outside the gates, and they just all start going insane and killing each other and fighting over these, because it's an Eldar planet, and there's all these soul stones, and they're all fighting over these soul stones. And then literally there's 2,000 of them. At the end of the brawl, there's just like one guy stood outside. And it was just all these Iron Warriors stood on the walls looking down going, what happened then? Where are they all gone? It's just like this one dude holding a load of soul stones. And then basically it was a ruse basically by Fulgrim. He was never never any angel exterminators. It was an opportunity for him to basically take Perturbo's power, and become something more, or sacrifice it for Slaanesh. And it gifted Perturbo this stone that Perturbo wore around his neck. But what he didn't realise is that it was actually weakening him every day. It was taking his strength away. So when Fulgrim like faced him up, he was just like flopping about on the floor, and basically Perturbo manages to crush the stone, hits Fulgrim with a thunder hammer. Fulgrim disappears, and then in a flash of light, he reappears in like his serpentine form.
Right, this is his demon form, isn't it?
Yeah, so he ascended to demonhood, but obviously while this was all happening, some of the Shattered Legions had actually ambushed them in like this. It was like this Eldar sanctum or labyrinth, because that's why obviously Fulgrim needed Perturbo because of his brilliant mind.
Yeah.
And that's when he ascended to, and then he just kind of disappeared, and you don't see him for a little bit.
Well, because later on, when I catch up with Fulgrim again, he was in his serpent form on a landing pad, and you had Perturbo, you had him and Horus there, I think, and that's where we see this Raven Guard and Iron Hand gunship come up and just start blapping at them, sort of thing, blah 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 blah, you know, just shooting away, and it's just an amazing sequence. And I was like, what? I think one of them runs up, like one of the Primarchs, like legs it up onto the ship and just sort of smashes up the cockpit.
Yeah, and then that's when he shows off his psychic prowess, basically as a demon. Yeah. And he just basically looks up at the sky and pops a ship with his mind. Yeah. So, oh yeah, pop. And then you can see everyone looking at him going, "Ooh, demons are good. I want to be a demon."
See, this is what I like about it. Okay, because we're going to be seeing these figures coming out, these miniatures coming out, and they've already said Forge World are going to be doing the Demon Prince versions of the Primarchs, the ones that that have turned. It'll be really nice to see maybe the other Primarchs done again as well, slightly different, maybe different armor, maybe a different set of weapons and stuff like that. That'd be kind of cool to see that happen. But we know that they're going to do the demon versions, because Angron is just going to be massive.
He's just going to be like a giant, bloodthirster thing.
It's just going to look amazing, absolutely amazing. But I kind of like the idea of Fulgrim in his demon form.
Well, I think we was at the Heresy Weekender when they actually brought the point up of actually we might be making demon versions of the Primarchs. They actually had a picture of Fulgrim up on the I want to say OHP, but overhead protector, I think.
Yeah.
How old am I? Yes.
When you get to 45, even people remember those little box things, the acetate drawings, and stuff like that. They get their marker pen and draw on it. Go on.
And I was just like, wow. I would love to see. The demon version, especially Fulgrim, because the way that serpentine body and the extra arms, and you could just make him look absolutely beautiful. So that'd be amazing. Like you say, Angron.
I think he'll look quite amazing, because I remember seeing, the artwork done by, I can't remember his name now, but it looked amazing back then, back in the old days when they did the Armageddon, and you saw beautiful drawing of Angron with like his demon and his the butcher's nails and stuff like that, that are turned into dreads almost. I kind of like seeing that, and we've seen hundreds of people do their own version through either green stuffing or making it. But I kind of think Angron would be a beautiful thing to behold, even though his transformation was just naff. But I'm looking forward to the serpentine version of Fulgrim, because he'll have wings as well. Is it 4 sets of wings? Or is it just 2?
I've seen different variations. Some say they're kind of bat-like, but I've also heard they're kind of moth-like.
Or like bird wings or angel wings.
Sort of
so that's really bizarre. Really
I
bizarre.
know. Yeah, it's going to be really cool though.
But I'm really hoping they do put a bit of effort into that, because I mean, so far the models have just been superb.
Yeah.
But you know what? I've got no complaints with any of the models, unfortunately, to be fair. But we've moaned about other bits and pieces. But after this, we now see them moving to the Siege of Terra. Now, pretty much everybody at the Siege of Terra is attacking the palace and trying to push their way in, either capturing the ports, starports and stuff like that, the spaceports and stuff, capturing areas that are strategically, they need to take control of. Meanwhile, the Emperor's children are just raping and pillaging, basically, aren't they?
Yeah. I read somewhere the other day, fulfilling their deviant needs. I think they explained it.
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
But you kind of know what they're trying to get at there.
You know what their deviant needs are going to be. So, I mean, as for Slaanesh, I mean, we've seen it with, I think, Games Workshop. I think with their Slaanesh Beast, it's become very much sort of like, we're a bit worried about how that's turning out, sort of thing. And they sort of knocked it on the head in the fantasy sector by having him captured by the Horn Rat. And his followers spread out all over the place. But 40k, they really can't get rid of it in 40k because he's really needed as a ruinous power, and it's entrenched deeply within the whole mythos of the Horus Heresy.
Yeah, I think they did it for a reason. I think everyone sees it in especially the Age of Sigmar thing, that they were trying to kiddify it.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you've got like a sex, drugs, and rock and roll god, and there's boobs on things, and it's very sadomasochistic.
Boobs. Yeah, I mean, it has got one. Basically, if you don't know anything about Slaanesh, it has like a female boob chest piece.
Remember the other thing as well?
Yeah, no, yeah, but the thing is that the models, I think in the 80s it kind of suited, and the early 90s it kind of worked really well, and then it's got into like the like now, like I think it's I mean, I've got no problem with it. I kind of like the models. I want them to keep the models the way they are, because I think if you take that away from it, it kind of ruins it.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing with the with Slaanesh was it was all about lust. It was all about the physical need and stuff like that. Blood for the blood god. It was disease and stuff like that for Nurgle. It was change for Zinch and stuff.
Mutation.
So they all had their role within humanity. You could reflect it back to the lust and that sort of stuff, whatever it's called, I can't remember now.
Depravity. That's what it was basically about.
Yeah, it was. It was about that, and it's good that it was in there, and it's really important to the Horus Heresy, because there's that whole. That's what the Thousand Sons, not Thousand Sons. That's what the children, Emperor's Children, are all about. It's that perfection, the need to become perfect, and it's become so much ingrained into them that it's their downfall, so to speak, and that works really well with Slaanesh.
When I look back, I mean, when I first got back into the hobby, when I was looking at models on the GW website, and you had the Emperor's Children, and you had these kind of, do you remember the old noise? And they had like their faces stretched out over their shoulder guards and stuff. And I just looked at them and I thought, oh, that's me all over. It's gotta be done. And the fact as well that there was pink. And I thought, that's really brave. That is, I like the idea of chaos and pink, and it kind of like you say, they'll never be able to do that in 40k or 30k, because it's so entrenched now.
Yeah.
Such a part of the.
But even the old Noisebreens had,
guitars,
guitars, but they had the tiger skin aspect to it. The one thigh high boot, with all the studs and stuff like that on it. I mean, come on, let's face it, it's the dominatrix of the Space Marine world, isn't it? Of the Chaos world and stuff like that. It was, it had that sort of like rubber leather studded look about everything, and that's that worked. It worked because it separated them from all the other ruinous powers, you know. And I think don't be afraid to keep that. You know, I don't think you know. I think they've created such an immense theology, immense background story and fluff to everything. From from even how a bolter works to a chainsword, even how the power armor works, how a space marine's created and stuff like that. They've created all this background fluff. They've got to keep it in there. Don't be afraid to keep that in there, because I don't think people are going to look at it and go, "Oh, that's sexist," or "That's this," and it's teaching our kids to lust over this and want to be like this, because it doesn't. It's a goddamn game. There's no proof that it turns kids insane.
Me and you have spoken about this before. We both, I think we both suffered burnout, whether it be painting or even reading the books sometimes. You know, it was always kind of like, oh, it's another stoic space marine. Where I think with the Emperor's Children, they add something different. They add, I mean, especially in Angel Exterminatus, I mean, it was so funny when the two Iron Warriors go over to the Emperor's Children's ship, and they're literally sat in kind of like a nightclub / bar in a booth with like Eidolon, and he was just like, and there was like these kind of like mutated waiters and servers where they had like multiple limbs and the head of an insect and a crab claw, and these Iron Warriors, you imagine, you know, they're quite brutal and just sitting in this booth looking around going, what's going on? What is going on? And then by the end of it, I cut a long story short, that they inhale some of the Emperor's Children's narcotics, and then it's almost, they've gone from like being brutal savage Iron Warriors to talking whether they're going to get a nipple piercing. It's just like, oh, go on, Dryden, you do it and I'll do it. Go on. And then it's just literally, yeah. And when they go back to the Iron Warriors ship, they literally kind of look at each other going, we can't do this. And like Eidolon's going, just have one more shot and you'll be completely there. And they're like, no, we've got to get back to the ship now. And they go back, and the kind of the fog's lifted, and they're like, don't go over there. It's literally that crazy. I mean the bit where Fulgrim and Perturabo meet, and Perturabo stood there with all these, you know, these brutal Iron Warriors, and they were like, all this fanfare and stuff. And then like Fulgrim's ship lands, and then he gets out, and there's like loads of like, you can imagine like it says coarse music, and all of these kind of like cultists doing things, and he's like walking on their bodies as they're cutting their own throats. Yeah. And he's just like, oh my god! And he's literally using these like cultists as they fall to walk on, and he's not wearing his armor; he's just wearing some kind of like robe thing. And you know, he was probably hanging free, and
I think it leaves a lot to the imagination where they sit there and they sort of like, they describe it, and straight away in your head you've got this vision. And I kind of enjoyed the fact that he just sort of he just doesn't give a care, does he? He just, at the end of it, he's like, I don't care anymore. But after the Siege of Terra, this is where they become basically something completely different. They're no longer like the Space Marines. They're no longer like the classic Space Marine. They are basically mutated. They are just revel in the torture, the pleasure that it gives, and the pain that it gives, sort of thing, to others and to them. And it just becomes this whole need for basically depravity, doesn't it? Because let's face it, if your planet's under attack and it's going to be the Chaos Ruinous Powers, you want someone other than the Emperor's Children to turn up. Because, I mean, let's face it, you'd rather have, at the end of the day, the Dark Eldar turn up, you know, and even that's going to go wrong for you, but at least you're given a fighting chance.
They cleared whole planet. They literally cleared whole planets to take back with them. Yeah, and that's what they were doing. And then when they got into the Eye of Terror, and a lot of the other legions were kind of still legions. Yeah. And then basically the Emperor's Children exhausted all of their slaves and all of their. I mean, at one point, they were kind of liquidizing humans and
Yeah.
using that as like the basis for narcotics and things. And then they started to raid the other Chaos Legions and taking their slaves,
Yeah.
and thus causing kind of like conflict and wars within the Eye of Terror. Where if it wasn't for the Emperor's Children, maybe there might have been a second push.
Yeah.
But then obviously they were obviously raiding and hitting other Chaos Legions. I mean, they Emperor's Children split the World Eaters. The World Eaters were still a legion, and made
How did they split the World Eaters?
But they were basically on this planet, and it was like an Emperor's Children raiding party. And it was when Khan the Betrayer was there, and it was a planet where basically as soon as it's night time, it goes to like minus 100 or something, and literally people die. So even these berserkers were digging holes and trying to find cover. And Khan was that enraged, he just got a flamer and started burning all of his own berserkers and burning all the holes that they dug. And then that's why he became Khan the Betrayer. That's where he got the name from, and literally shattered the World Eaters.
Yeah.
So
because I always thought it was like just I knew that story. There was that story there. I couldn't remember the finer details of it, but I kind of Khan. We've got to do a World Eaters one next. I think next week we need to do World Eaters, or maybe Blood Angels, because I know how much you hate the Blood Angels.
I
think we'll do Blood Angels next. But it's like if you're going to create an army that's the most depraved and savagely just debauched sort of thing, it's the Emperor's Children. If you want to play something that's slightly warped and gives you the chance to do some really neon and just like abstract colors and stuff, that's the army to go for, to be fair. 100%. or Thousand Suns, I mean, because obviously pink horrors and stuff like that, but you can really create some wonderful pieces with the Emperor's Children just by cutting up Space Marines and adding parts from like just other minis, like especially the Chaos box sets and stuff, like what they called Slanesh, the Slanesh ones, the claws and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, the Seekers and stuff.
Yeah, and all that sort of stuff. I mean, you can do some mental stuff, and plus you can add in like weird heads and stuff, because they've got those ones with the long tongues and the stuff that come out, like with the long beaky things with the tongues that hang out that they ride along on. Those sort of creatures.
That was so cool. I mean, like you say, that the heads that when I first started, it was tubes that went from the back of their neck into their eyes, and then they kind of had like a gas mask kind of mouth.
Yeah.
And it was just like you say, it was so strange, and it was really unique to play as well.
Yeah.
Because they were the first army that I played with, Emperor's Children, and obviously
it's going to be nice to see how. Obviously, you're going to have the Emperor's Children as they are now, but what are the demonic Emperor's Children going to be look like? What are the ones later on? If Forge do like head and torso, what are they going to look like?
I can't wait. I really can't wait, because that'll be one of the most interesting, and it might make me pick up the Emperor's Children again. And do you think that's something? Again.
Do you think that's do purple again? Do you think that's something? Do you think if you did them again, how would you do them differently to how you did them beforehand?
I think I would do them Angel Exterminatus onwards, where they're all, what they are, what they're about, and I think, it'd be definitely very interesting. Like, I never even thought of that, if I'm going to be honest, whether they would do kind of like mutated Marines or a little bit more chaos-y. Yeah, that would be really interesting. That would definitely make me go back.
Because there's nothing stopping you from getting the Forge-Rolled Slanesh stuff now and mixing it in with the Horus Heresy stuff. To do that, to make those few twisted like sisters, so to speak, and those few weird like models and in your army and stuff, because I kind of like seeing people's armies at the moment where I think we're at a stage now where everybody's very formulated. Boom, boom, boom. This is what my army looks
Massively,
like.
Yeah.
This is the one for the book. This is the one from this book. This is the one, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So, for example, you look at Kev and you look at Chuffy's salamanders, very regimented.
Yeah.
These are what we've got. These are what we've got. You look at Jackson's Iron Hands.
Yeah.
You know, they're very regimented in the style that you see in the books and stuff like that, which is really cool. You know, obviously they're beautiful, fluffy armies.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice later on when they start doing the warp stuff, because there is in the new book there's Shattered Legions in there. You can actually formulate like different units from different armies and stuff and bring them together. So it'll be really nice seeing those sort of armies starting to appear, and it'll be really nice seeing the chaos stuff starting to appear within the ranks of people's armies.
I think I agree with you. It's become very fun, and you can't blame people. You know, since Forge World have done those specific colours, a lot of people, but you do see a lot of armies that look the same. Like you say, I think it's about individualism now. It's like, what can I do a little bit different? And that's coming across as well now. I mean, over the last 6 to 10 months, I've seen that where people are going, I actually don't like Dynat's head. I'm going to put this on him, and people are asking, I want this sword for this character, and I'm mixing it up a bit, because it was for a while a little bit kind of, everyone was kind of going the same route, where with us we had to mix and match.
Well, I mean, but we didn't have the privilege at the beginning of having the models to hand. I think, you have to a point have, the regimental stuff. Okay, you've got to have that, and I think if you're getting into it, when you've got the books and you're laying out your armies, well, we know that this is how a Space Marine needs to be painted, and each legion has their own color scheme. So when you've got them all laid out and there's like 30 aside, and there's all these people playing sort of thing, there's a big block of yellow, there's a big block of red, there's a big block of green, there's a big block of black, sort of thing like that, big block of white. So you can see it on the table. It looks amazing, absolutely amazing. When you've got those independent, and you're right, you have seen someone like the, specialized little pieces that people have been doing, especially for their, and we do it all the time when we're building like Praetors, or we're playing around with the plastics that we get. We chop stuff up to make them look a little bit more individual. But I think later, as we see the more chaosy stuff coming in, especially if they do the Chaos Primarchs, we're going to see I'm hoping to see a lot more sort of individual armies starting to spawn out. Whether people go, okay, well, I've got my normal Horus Heresy army, that goes aside. Now I'm going to use all the parts I've got left over and start to build my own sort of chaos version of that. That would look smashing.
I think a lot of people that I speak to are kind of, well, we're almost done that. There's only a few Primarchs left and maybe a few characters, but there's so much, like you say, the Demon Primarchs. I mean, one of the biggest things I'm looking forward to is obviously Dark Mechanicum. I think that's going to be absolutely amazing. And then, like you say, like if they take this on board and do, like you say, the Twisted Legions, where you can start to see them start to turn and get a mutated head or a stranger arm, or
Well, didn't they the Death Guard? Haven't they already brought out the pointy helmet, the helmet with the pointy bits on the top? Yeah. So to see those starting to appear would be really cool, or even seeing the bloated Space Marine bellies and stuff. That you can already buy mixed in would look lovely.
They're fantastic as well. They've been out for quite a while as well, and there's like bits of intestine hanging out of them and stuff. Yeah. So
no, exactly.
that would be amazing.
Did you see the Space Wolf thing that was let out today, the newsletter? Heresy Space Wolves coming soon, and then you saw a picture of Heresy Space Wolves, and then you dropped down and they showed you Space Wolves, but the old set with the plastic gear.
Oh, okay.
It was the old set that you can buy at Forge World already, but it was the Terminators, with the resin upper bodies and the basic just GW plastic Terminator bodies underneath. So you had the Space Wolves at the top, the new, Heresy Mark 4, Mark 5 armor, whatever it is, with shoulder pads. And then you had underneath that the Space Wolf, which are the modern Space Wolf sort of thing. So I'm wondering whether they say, there you go, that's a form of Terminator armor for the Heresy as well. It's not just, because they've already said there's variants of Terminator armor made from different systems and stuff, or different factories. They have their own set of data, or whatever they're called, blueprints, whatever they're called. They've got a special name. And you know, like Tartarus is one make, you know, Cataphractii is another make, sort of thing, and then you've got Dogface, which is another set of Terminator armor. But they've all been around for thousands and hundreds of years, or whatever like that. So I'm wondering whether they are going to be the Space Wolf bodies. I was kind of hoping they would do a Cataphractii. I was really hoping for Cataphractii.
I don't think that. I think they'll do a specialised. I think if they just go, oh well, you've already got the Terminator upgrade sprue, I think Wolves fans would be upset. I should imagine.
I think they may even just do the shoulder pad, which you seem to see, but they do a lot of the other stuff. Okay, so we're getting away from the Emperor's Children. We're talking about Space Wolves, but I just thought I'd throw that in there. But you know, it'd be interesting to see how they develop the Emperor's Children as we go along. Whether it be fictional stuff that we see in the storybooks and how they change within the actual books and the novels and the audio. But I'd love to see that also in some of the models that they launch a little bit later on. And now we're not going to see that as a sudden change, but it would be nice if they bring that out just as torso, head, you know, maybe a shoulder pad.
Do you think the books will go that far? Do you think that they'll literally go from the Siege of Terra to them chasing them back into the Eye of Terror?
I don't think, but I mean, you're looking at a lot of the legions, traitor legions, already starting to get a little bit warped, and already we know that the Emperor's Children are starting to spaz out. You know, they're starting to get a bit naughty and a bit frisky. They're starting to add little bits and pieces to their armor, dress slightly differently, act a lot differently. So by the time they get to the Siege of Terror, they're already, you know, partying. They're already on the Love Boat.
Oh yeah, but do you think Black Library will, after the Siege of Terror, do maybe another series or a continuation of the series where the literally loyalists are chasing down, or maybe even leaving stories for some of the Primarchs, like, you know, Khan and Russ and
I think they'll definitely do. I mean, come on, let's face it, Horus Heresy is a massive cash cow for GW. I mean, it's probably its biggest. It's its big. Black Library is one of its biggest sellers. Forge World, it's what we buy now. Have you noticed, like, the release of fantasy models compared to Horus Heresy models? There's always a massive launch of Heresy models per month, you know, coming out, or each week, sort of thing. There's always something there. You know, we don't see as much of the fantasy stuff being launched, do we? We don't see that much 40k stuff being launched these days from Forge World. If not, it's stuff that you can use from the Horus Heresy into 40k. So we're starting to see a lot more. So why not cash in on after the? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they've already started, you know, planning it out, what's going to happen after the Siege of Terror, you know, for the novel systems anyway, and the audios. You know, we were saying in the first Grumpy Old Wargamers, are we going to see an end times? We don't know, but there must be something that leads us off from. I mean, that'd be silly not to. Let's face it. It's like, I was going to say, because obviously you've got Guilliman takes out Alfarius, Fulgrim takes out Guilliman. Yeah,
you know,
I mean, there's nothing
as well, you know.
Exactly. I mean, there's nothing to say that they can't and they won't. I mean, you'd be a bit of a fool to not. It's almost like writing Lord of the Rings and only doing one film, you know, and never doing any more. Well, you've got your one film, you're not doing any more. You're never going to have any of the other movies. Here's Star Wars. You're never going to get any more Star Wars movies ever again.
But I would love to see books where, especially where Primarchs have just gone, do you know what? Or lost their mind, like Khan. He's like, this is it now. I'm chasing you down, killing you. Same with Russ. Same with, you know, their end stories. What were their last thoughts? What were they feeling? You know, because you had all that, obviously, Codex has started. And that's quite a few years after. You know, so I hope they do carry it on.
They're doing Primarch books, aren't they? They've got a series of Primarch books coming out. The first one we're seeing is the Ultramarine one, and they're doing another.
What a surprise!
Yeah. but Ultramarines have always been their flagship troops, haven't they? Basically, let's face it, they've always been their poster boys. Before that, it was the Rainbow Warriors back in the day, and now it's been Ultramarines. I mean, Ultramarines. I mean, whenever you see their massive army builds, remember the Games Day where they used to do the massive armies, and they would have like a whole company laid out. It was always like Ultramarines. It was always like the massive army of Ultramarines laid out, and sometimes Blood Angels, depending on what you saw. But the thing is that I can see, they're doing a series of books all about the Primarchs, and they're just each book will come out about each individual Primarch and stuff that's happening with them, either Horus Heresy or beforehand. I don't know, but it's obvious that once the Siege of Terra is over, we've got a long wait for those books to come out anyway. Why not cash in on this is what happens next, and we're going to see what happened with this Primarch, and because we want to know, we want to read it, we're fans of the product, and at the end of the day we want to see that. We'll pay for it.
Yeah, definitely. There's so many little intricate stories after the Siege of Terra that I want to see and read about, and when you do read about things, it's kind of, it's not fully accurate, or it's not fleshed out enough. Yeah. And obviously the conflict between Kurz and the Line and how long that goes on, and I want to read about that. I do want to read about. I mean, obviously they could go on forever and ever and ever, but I would like to, read about the stories within the Eye of Terror. Between, we literally just got here, what we're going to do, the Emperor's Children, we've run out of slaves.
Yeah.
Warriors,
let's go over there and get some slaves. It would be cool to see that sort of stuff. I mean, we've already seen it now starting to appear with obviously the Thousand Sons, because their story just takes us to an alternative plane reality where they are now. That's where they're based. That's where they are, and that's where they're left off. But it'd be kind of nice to see that evolve, because like I say, it's a cash cow, dude. Why the hell wouldn't you tap into that? They're the Disney of the mini world, aren't they? Let's face it. You're going to cash into as much as possible, and create as much, because it's their business. At the end of the day, they're in the business of making Space Marines, and collecting. As one of them said to me, we make toy soldiers. That's what we do. And I was like, no, you do more than that. You've influenced a whole generation of children, and many, many more. But it's there. Why not tap into it? I personally, I want to see more of the different legions and their stories of what's happening with their characters. I want to see more stuff based White Scars. I want to see more stuff based Imperial Fist, because there's a whole load of stuff about the Imperial Fist that we still don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is with this, when I first started it, and now, when you said, "Oh, we're going to be doing Emperor's Children," and I was just like, "Well, I'll see if there's anything there." And there's so many more stories added from a few years ago. I mean, some of the things that like Fabius Boyle has been up to, where he actually went and trained with the Dark Eldar and the Homunculi in Fleshworks and stuff, and I was just like, "Wow, that," And then the story of Lucius. I mean, that'd be a book series in its own. Yeah. On its own, where Lucius is looking for challenges, and he goes to the Thousand Suns planet and challenges. Is it Shatar or something? And the Thousand Suns, the Thousand Sun is that good. He's pointing out Lucius's flaws. He's like, "Oh, you stepped a little bit too forward there." And you see, I'd love to read that.
Yeah. But you see, their character stories that we want to know about. I'd love to see on their, if they had like a Black Library set up a wiki. I don't know if they've got their own wiki, but it'd be really nice to see like the whole in-depth of each character story, on the wiki, all about individual characters, like a data file and all those characters sort of thing. And they've got their own, because at the moment we rely on people like us updating, Wikipedia and stuff like that, and the lexicon and stuff. It'd be really nice if they had that sort of stuff, a definitive, this is their timeline. this is their story.
Yeah,
This is what happened.
That'd be amazing, because it's very. I mean, they have gotten that in sorts, but it's scattered. It's scattered all over the place. It's kind of like Lucius, and then it kind of takes you off on. I'm terrible with it. I'll go off on tangents. It's kind of like I'm reading something, and then there's something in blue that I want to read, and then I'll click on that and go off, and
Yeah,
so I'll never finish.
Why not just have a data file that shows everything? Here's like in their books they have, their history file, which is this is the timeline, on this date, blah 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 blah, this year. Why not just have that as a data file, for every single character? Okay, it's a lot of work to create, but people want that. People want to be able to tap into that. They love all this there's a ton of fan fiction out there as well. There's the alternative Horus Heresy. What if this character had been the one, there's Rogue Dawn, his heresy.
That's amazing.
The Dawn heresy is absolutely amazing. So why not have data files and each character that everybody can just tap into to read about, because we all want to read about our favorite characters, and even if it's like they'll probably do it as a pay-per-view thing anyway, like an encyclopedia of every single of the Horus Heresy or the 40k timeline. Wow.
But people have actually done that, haven't they? They've literally read little snippets from books, and even going back to the first codexes and Rogue Trader and all these references, and put them all together. And somebody, a fan's done that. Somebody out of love has done that for us to read. But when you read into some of the, I mean, like I said before, when I read about Sevatar, I didn't know anything about him. He just looked like Count Chocula from the cereal packets. And then he was this fantastic character. And then I mean, Fabius. I mean, I would recommend anybody to go on Lexicon and read about Fabius. He's had his fingers in so many pies, it's ridiculous. I mean, from cloning. I mean, and there was a snippet today that got me really, really excited when he said that he was boasting that he's got the basically the genetic material to recreate the 20, not the 18, the 20 Primarchs.
See, this is interesting you say that, because today I saw something appear on my news feed on Facebook where it was like the 20 Primarchs, and it talked about the 20 Primarchs and the two that are supposedly the missing two, or the invisible two, or whatever it was. So I kind of like the idea that he has, the genetic makeup to create all the other Primarchs, which would be quite cool, because he could just build an army of Primarchs.
I know, yeah. This is it. I mean, I don't know how accurate it is, but the fact that he could make 10, 15 Pharisees, I think it's amazing. I mean, I know he cloned Horus, but it kind of wasn't Horus.
Yeah, because this is the thing. This is the thing that I remember reading that I think it was the not Black Legion, but the Black Crusades, that he created Horus, a new Horus, cloned him, and Abaddon just turns up with his army and just goes, kills him outright, because it's a travesty.
Well, they stole the body, didn't they? They stole Horus's body.
Well, this is it, yeah.
And then they cloned him.
They leave with it, don't they? Yeah, they leave with the body, don't they? Because it's sort of like carried away as a ceremonial thing on his battle barge, and they just disappear off into space with it. Which always made me laugh, because he's on board on board his own ship, so they don't have to steal his body, because they've got it anyway. It's not like the Emperor took it with him and said, no, let's take his body, we're going to bury it on Earth, on the planet Terra. And they sort of go, no, we're going to take it away with us, you can't have it, and we nicked it. I kind of like the idea that I can understand if they did that, whether it was on Earth and they fight on Earth, but it was always on board his battleship, on board his battle barge. So it was always there, they just disappeared with it, as in they flew away with it. But yeah, I don't know, dude. It's like, I kind of hope that we see more background stuff to it, more story that happens in between. So the time between Ultramar and the Siege of Terra, there's this 7-year gap, isn't there? Of like absolute nothingness that no one knows about, so they can make up whatever they want in between there. You know, and we're going to see a whole load of like stories appearing. I don't want, you know, half of me kind of wants it to happen, just get it over and done with so we can get to the Siege of Terra. And the other half of me kind of wants this, well, what did these lot get up to in that time? But I don't want them to milk it forever and ever, where we just kind of, you know, I'm, like I said, I'm 45 now. I don't want to be doing this when I'm 50.
Yeah, losing your sight, yeah.
You know, and just listening to audio tapes, you know, and remembering the times when I was like young, painting stuff or standing in my lawn with my dressing gown on, shouting out at kids to get off my land and stuff like that.
It fires the imagination, though, the missing Primarchs. I mean, it's something. I meant to send you it. I'll have to send it to you after the show. There's a guy that's actually created his own. I think it's. I don't know whether it's the 2nd or the 11th, but he's created his own Primarch. He's had professional artwork done.
Yeah. He's
had minis created for them, and they look absolutely amazing. They're Oriental based. They're Japanese based. They're kind of.
I've seen them.
Samurai. Have you seen it? Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen it.
Blew me away. I was like,
as soon as you said samurai, I've seen it.
Yeah.
That is intriguing. But the whole point of that was that they were there for us to create our own Primarchs. Yeah. Our own legions. That was the whole premise. Well, that's what they said to us. You know, oh well, they've gone missing, but they're there for you to do what you want to create. You can create your own legion based on the fact that there's these 2 missing Primarchs. Because I was reading today, basically the idea is that because the others were sent out by Chaos, the idea is 20 caskets were sent out into the warp, weren't it, basically by Chaos. And only 18 were found, but maybe the 2 were found beforehand by the Emperor, and they had just become so corrupt that they just got rid of them. Or they became corrupt right at the beginning or something happened right at the beginning of the Great Crusade that forces him to get rid of them all. Go on, off you go, and they disappear.
I've become kind of addicted to this since we've been doing these shows, and I've been piecing together bits, and it's kind of intimated that the Wolves did it, but on a lot of occasions, the Wolves obviously help with the purge.
Yeah.
But in a lot of ways, in more ways, he says that the Emperor dealt with them himself. That the Emperor put them down, and then it's the swelling of the other legions as well. Some of the other legions, it points to the fact that there wasn't anything wrong with the legionnaires. There was something wrong with the Primarch. Yeah.
Well, there's the whole point that if you add this number to this number, you get Ultramarines.
Yeah.
You know, there's this, isn't there? There's that. This Primarch number, this Primarch number, or this Legion number, and this Legion number. It points to Ultramarines, and that's why the Ultramarines are one of the biggest legions out there, because all these guys' armies have been put into the Ultramarines. But I mean, that's something we can talk about after we finish talking about all the other different legions. I think we should do a show dedicated to the 2 missing Primarchs.
I've got enough material for it,
and we can research as much as possible. I'm just going to make stuff up because I feel that's just what I want to do.
Like you say, I think that's what it's there for, isn't it? It's for you to go, you know.
So what I'm going to do is you're going to research it. I'm just going to make up a load of stuff.
And see which one's best.
Which one's the best one, and which one comes up with it. Okay, guys. So I feel that we've done as much of the Emperor's Children as we can possibly do tonight. I've got to say again, dude, thanks for joining me. Next week we're going to be doing Blood Angels.
Oh, was you serious? Was you serious about that?
Yeah, I think we should do Blood Angels. Or in the comments below, put down which legion you'd rather us talk about.
We're going to put Blood Angels to annoy me, aren't they?
And they are. And what stuff you want us to make up about it as well. Okay, because I feel that I just haven't researched for this. I looked at the Emperor's Children thing and just went, yeah, Emperor's Children, I really hate them. But like I said, I liked the end of the Fulgrim book. It was the best part, the end.
Yeah.
You know, for me, it was the end, last 300 pages of the book I kind of enjoyed. But you know, each legion for me has their benefits. They have their cons and pros. and the models look absolutely exceptional, and you can't fault that.
It just bugs me that, out there is a blood angel called Wilf. Wilf. You just know that's a blood angel name, isn't it? Or Tarquin. Wilf and Tarquin.
I think Tarquin's a very blood angel name, and Tobias as well.
Yeah.
I think it's a
but
real
when you put
blood
brother
angel
into that, brother Wilf, brother
name.
Tarquin.
And brother Tobias.
Yeah.
The blood angel, Sanguinian Guard. It works really well. Okay, guys, listen, you be good, you be safe, dude. Thanks so much for joining me again.
No problem.
We're going to see you next week. You let us know in the comments what you want us to talk about, as in what legion you want us to talk about. Otherwise, we'll just talk crap all night. And I'll see you very soon. You take care, guys. Be good.